Okay, with this one we're asked to find out what the end behavior is of the graph. And we're going to have to write this in what we call limit notation. So for this one, the big thing that we need to identify is the degree of this polynomial, which is 8. That's an even degree, and my leading coefficient is positive. Those are the big ones. We can plug this into our calculator. It'll give us the graph here. And with this notation, what we're looking at is what happens as x gets larger. So as x approaches infinity, in other words, as x gets larger here, as it approaches infinity, what happens to my f of x? What happens to y? If we look here, that also grows. That grows very, very fast in this case. So as x approaches infinity, f of x would approach infinity. And that would be your notation for the first part here. This is my as x approaches infinity. The other part that we have to do as well is as x approaches negative infinity. In other words, as x gets smaller. As x gets smaller, my y values, or my f of x in this case, gets larger. So f of x approaches infinity as x approaches negative infinity. And that just means as x gets smaller, my y values get larger. All right, let's look at kind of a little bit different one on this one. This one is also an even numbered degree, but this one has a negative leading coefficient. So, and if we were to graph this one, it kind of looks similar to the other one, only it's kind of flipped upside down. If you want to think of it that way, it's fine. So as this one's flipped upside down, again, we're going to go find out as x gets larger. As x approaches infinity, so as x gets larger here, my g of x in this case, it's going to get smaller. So as x approaches infinity, my g of x approaches negative infinity. In other words, it gets just smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, as x gets smaller, as x approaches negative infinity, my g of x would also approach negative infinity. Okay, and this is the notation that you would use for this one. As g of x approaches negative infinity, x approaches negative infinity. You'd write these down, and that's really what we're just concerned about on this one is just the end behavior, what's happening at the very end here.